This presentation has been compiled on behalf of the many reasonably minded women who seek an urgent but realistic solution to the serious problems many of them are facing. Our leaders and spokeswomen are Lynn Phillips and Marion and Doreen Smulders, who we call the Waspy Three. You are doubtless familiar with the background to this problem, so I will start with where we are now in August 2016. We've reached the point on the SPA timetable where women born in April 1953 have reached SPA, which they did last month. That means that about 2.7 million 1950s women, those currently aged between 57 and 63, have yet to reach their SPA. That's about 80% of the total. The older women in this cohort will already have lost out on a considerable amount of money, perhaps as much as £24,000. Most of these women still have years to go before they reach SPA, but are already finding it almost impossible to keep going, courtesy of illness, life-threatening in some cases, pain, the lack of jobs, or else the lack of employers willing to employ an older women, or they're simply struggling through the exhaustion of doing demanding jobs, often on top of caring for an older relative. They find it unsurprising to read that longevity, cited as one of the key reasons for the need to accelerate the increase in SPA in 2011, appears to be peaking. Those with savings left are finding it increasingly difficult to eke them out, given the continuous drop in interest rates. The Bank of England's base rate was 6.6% for most of 1995. Today, it is 0.25%. And those with savings in the form of a personal pension are faced with annuity rates that have dropped by about a third since 2006. A few women have sold their homes and moved to a cheaper part of the UK so that they have money on which to live. Some have sold their cars, others are in the process of selling their furniture, including their bed, and jewellery. Many cannot afford decent food, and come this winter will not be able to afford heating. They simply do not have what could be termed a life. It is not surprising, therefore, to hear that many of these women describe themselves as suicidal, broken, desperate, and as time goes on, their number will increase. Here are just a few of their stories. They are representative of many women living in the UK, the world's fifth richest economy today. Some of them may even be your constituents. Louisa's story is one of widespread ageism sapping pride and independence. I hated every time I went to the job centre. It is so degrading and embarrassing after working for 47 years. Even agencies don't want to know when you are nearly 63. Louise left grammar school at 15 because her mother was seriously ill. Her first marriage failed, and after a pathetic divorce settlement, she became homeless. She managed to restart her life, but with no child support allowance, had to work 3 jobs to keep her head above water. She was made redundant in 2014, but she's ineligible for JSA because her new husband is earning. She is existing on £36 a week occupational pension and fast disappearing savings. She is reliant on her husband. Since January 2016, she has applied for almost 100 jobs but cannot get past what she terms passport control. She has 47 years NICs. No state pension, no job, no JSA equals no life. Louisa's story is a good example of the sacrifices that females make from childhood through to old age because they are expected to put family before career. But despite all that she has contended with, Louise has managed to amass 47 years of NI payments. Surely that's enough to entitle her to help, let alone her dignity. Frances's story is one of women accessing savings to provide income. The winter fuel allowance would be a boon, as it's so darn cold up here, and JSA would be a lifesaver. Because I have a second property that I cannot sell, I am ineligible for JSA. The second property is counted as capital. I have 2 council taxes to pay, no income, and my life savings are fast running out. Frances started work at 15. She later took out time to do a degree and a company law certificate. She worked in the oil and gas industry but was made redundant in 2015. She purchased a retirement cottage in 2008. Then her revised SPA notification arrived, telling her that she had an additional 6 years to wait. That was in 2013. There are acute problems in Aberdeen. No jobs, no property market, stagnation ever since the oil price collapse. She's considering working overseas, but the competition is ferocious, and she has an 80-year-old mother to consider. She has 40 years of NICs. No state pension, no JSA, no prospects equals no life for Frances. Frances's story is one of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Aberdeen has been devastated by the drop in the oil price. In one street of 17 houses just outside the city, 16 households have been affected by redundancy. Well-qualified and highly experienced women like Frances simply cannot find work. In Frances's case, her private pension takes the form of property that she cannot sell. Aged only 60, Frances has up to 6 years to go until she reaches her state pension age. If she can't find work overseas, what is Frances supposed to do? Catherine's story, a case of women are subsisting on pitiful incomes. I am in deep despair, can only hope to die in bed from cold this winter, as I cannot afford heat nor to eat. Catherine started work at 16, she's now 61. She brought up 2 children while working 3 jobs, sometimes for as much as 50 hours a week. She was pensioned off at 51 due to permanent damage to her back caused by work. She had a stroke at the age of 53. Polymyalgia was diagnosed when she was 55, and she also suffers from coronary heart disease. She has an ESA payment of £90 per week, but it's reduced by £47 from her occupational pension payment. She's constantly threatened with sanctions if she doesn't do voluntary work. She would love to do it, but she cannot walk the half-mile to the nearest bus stop, and she cannot afford the bus fare even if she could get there. Catherine has 34 years of NICs. Catherine's story is a good example of how survival really does favour the fittest. Here is a lady who has done her best and who now lives not only with physical pain but with depression and constant money worries. She knows no peace because she is caught in a system that makes demands of her that, unable to stand for any length of time, she simply cannot cope with. Pat's story. Women are slowly perishing inside. If I am deemed fit to work, my ESA will stop and I will have 0 income, and what will I do? I have to be honest and say all this has made me think of suicide, as who can live, eat, pay bills, etc. with no money, and who will employ me with all my health issues at 61 years old? Pat has multiple very serious and chronic health problems which were diagnosed back in 2001. She was divorced shortly afterwards. Her settlement, ironically, was based on an SPA of 60, as neither her solicitor nor the judge knew about the 1995 Pensions Act. She has lost her home, job, and nearly her life in the space of a couple of years. She has to endure the trauma of yet another capability to work assessment. She cannot sleep, she's on morphine for pain, and high-dose antidepressants. She has 45 years NICs. Pat has suffered so much physically, mentally and emotionally, and now has the constant worry of being literally penniless. There are no holidays in Pat's life. Even if she feels up to it, she cannot go out for the day because she simply cannot afford it. Like Catherine, Pat is caught in a system she cannot cope with and whose demands add to her misery. Surely 45 years of NIC payment should exempt Pat from this? Surely enough is enough. These women have done no wrong. They were simply born at the wrong time. But we have no control over when we are born. But being born in the 1950s, particularly between 1953 and 1955, when the SPA timetable hurts the most, has resulted in an unfair burden being placed on women's shoulders. We were told that we are all in it together, but when it comes to women's SPA, some are much more in it than others. Born in March 1950 and you haven't lost a penny, born in March 1954 and you've lost as much as £28,000 already. Being told as late as age 58 that their SPA was going back to 65 or 66 gave women no time to plan, or to undo plans already made. Not knowing that they would not get their state pension at 60, some women handed in their notice and, as we've seen in Francis's case, made large financial commitments in the form of buying a retirement cottage. The shock these women have suffered has been severe. But what these case studies show more than anything is that no matter how hard you work or how diligently you plan, there are always circumstances beyond your control that can completely derail your life. But until life bowled them a googly, all these women had worked and had saved for their old age by faithfully paying their premiums in the form of their NICs to a government in whom they trusted. They have not seen 1p of their state pensions, despite the fact that they and their employers have paid in about 255 billion in today's values, and many are still paying in. They were told that they would receive their pensions at 60, and they believed it and they planned around it. Now they find that the goalposts have been moved, not once but several times, via the 1995 and 2011 Pensions Act, and in the increase in the number of qualifying NIC years from 30 to 35. These women are not scroungers. They are not asking for and don't want handouts. They are hard-working, responsible, decent women who only want what they have paid for, their state pension, and through that, their dignity, pride, and independence. And on the subject of hard work, last year, when talking about the Conservative Party manifesto, David Cameron said, "This goes to the heart of the country we are trying to build, one based on the principle of something for something, not something for nothing, where those who put in get out, where hard work is rewarded, where we make work pay." If, despite the change in leadership, these words reflect current thinking, then it is incumbent upon the government to take action to help the hard-working women of the 1950s, now, before it's too late. After all, they are only asking for the principle of pensions freedom to be applied to them in the way it was to those with personal pensions. Last year, George Osborne said, "It is right that people have these freedoms over the money they have worked hard for all their lives. We must never forget it is your money." But while granting pensions freedom for some, George Osborne had, 4 years earlier, effectively put 1950s women in a double lock by adding the 2011 Pensions Act to the 1995 Act, the infamous double whammy. As we've seen, this has had, is having, and will continue to have very serious consequences for many women because the state pension system was the only way they had of saving for their retirement. Many were barred from joining occupational schemes because they worked part-time or were thought to be temporary workers who would soon marry and have families. And many were simply too poorly paid to put money into a personal pension or some other form of savings. Many did save, but, as we've seen, those savings have been hit by low interest rates and are being used to pay bills. Just at the time when these women needed access to their life savings, they found it was locked away, and they weren't even given timely or appropriate notice of what was happening. It's time to loosen the shackles. Set 1950s women free by setting their money free. What you can do to help us. Join the WASPI APPG. Contact Tim Lawton, Barbara Keeley or Andrew Gwynn. Vote for an urgent solution to this problem. WASPI 3 women do not expect a return to 60 in any form. We simply want a solution that helps as many women as possible, as quickly as possible. A solution that helps women safely across the bridge to their SPA. Please support us and give 1950s women back their lives.